Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you enjoy the content, please go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. But right now, we're talking about potential cuts for the Jacksonville Jaguars following the 2023 season. Right now, kind of a dead period in terms of news. OTAs just ended. Mandatory minicamp is next week. Head coach Doug Peterson, he gave most of the veterans the week off. So not going to be a lot going on until training camp really ramps up. So right now, a little bit of a dead period. Thought we could look ahead at what the Jaguars might be doing following the 2023 season, because it's going to be a big offseason in 2024. You know, according to overthecap.com, the Jaguars have $25.2 million in cap space for the 2024 season. They're going to want to clear even more than that for signing Trevor Lawrence and company, a bunch of young players that the Jaguars will want to extend and keep around. And so we're going to look at some contracts that the Jaguars might want to move on from. Now, these are all talented players, talented guys I think the Jaguars really like, so I'm not trying to belittle them or their profession, but I'm just trying to be informative of where this could be headed following the 2023 season. So we'll go ahead and dive into it. I've got 6 names that the Jaguars would save a lot of money, a lot of cap by moving on from following the 2023 season, again, in order to create more space for signing Trevor Lawrence and other players. The only one on here that I feel confident is on his way out for sure is Cam Robinson. And again, that's nothing against Cam Robinson, but the money the Jaguars would save from moving on from Cam Robinson after the 2023 season is absolutely bonkers. They would save $17.75 million against the salary cap in 2024 by moving on from Cam Robinson. Look, they have Walker Little. They just brought in Anton Harrison in the first round. Josh Wells is also on the roster. I think the Jaguars have made preparations for potentially moving on from Cam Robinson. I think that's going to end up being the case just at that cap number. His play has not really justified the number there, I think, with that signing. And so I think the Jaguars, they are going to move on with the preparations they've made at offensive tackle to replace Cam Robinson, quite frankly. Looking at the next guy, for me, again, all these next 5 players I'm going to talk about, I think it's just a possibility. They could move on from them. I think some of them they definitely will move on from. I'm just not sure which ones, because I think all of these players are guys that the Jaguars really do like and value on their team. But going ahead with Foye Oluokun here at linebacker, the Jaguars would save $7.2 million against the cap in 2024 by moving on. And look, he is a captain. He is a leader, unbelievable player, racks up the tackles, makes big plays for his defense. But the fact of the matter is the Jaguars in the last 2 drafts, they have moved up in the first round to draft Devin Lloyd. They drafted Chad Muma in the 3rd round, and then they come back the next year and they bring Ventrell Miller in with a 4th round pick. The Jaguars have made preparations to fill out that linebacker room, get younger, and I think potentially move on from Foye Oluokun. I don't know if they will, because he means so much to that defense. I think he was their most impactful defensive player last year in terms of being the leader, the heart and soul of that defense. I'm not saying he's their best defensive player. I think you'd look at Tyson Campbell, Josh Allen, a couple others maybe, but Foye is up there with those guys, and he was an impact player for them, and he was the captain of the defense. No doubt about it in my mind in 2022. Next up is Rayshawn Jenkins. The Jaguars would save $5.1 million against the cap in 2024 by moving on from him. He's a guy that means a lot to the defense as well, a really good safety in terms of a guy that can be a playmaker both in coverage and as a downhill defender, so he can do a lot for you. There's no doubt about it on the back end, but for me, looking at what they've done at the safety position, and they brought back Andrew Wingard this year. Obviously, they have Andre Cisco at free safety. They also brought in Antonio Johnson in the draft, a guy that I think that they're going to look at as a future starter. So yeah, Rayshawn Jenkins, he could be on the chopping block after the 2023 season for the Jaguars. Next up is wide receiver Zay Jones. The team would save just under $4.5 million in 2024 against the cap by moving on from Zay. I don't really think that this one makes a ton of sense unless there are subsequent moves at the wide receiver position, because he is clearly your 3rd best receiver. I don't think you want to have a major downgrade at that spot going into the 2024 season. Now, you are going to have to pay Calvin Ridley. You're already paying Christian Kirk a lot. So maybe you don't want to pay 3 guys that big number that you would have to pay all three of them in 2024, that could make sense. But if that's the situation, the Jaguars, I think, would need to go wide receiver earlier in the draft or potentially add someone else via free agency. I just don't think you have what you want behind Zay Jones for someone to step up and be the number 3. Obviously, I think Parker Washington has a shot to be a productive player for the Jaguars. I think eventually he will be, but he projects more as a slot receiver than an outside receiver like Zay Jones. So I think if the Jaguars did move on from Zay Jones, they definitely need to replace him. Like some of these other guys we've talked about, I think there's replacements already on the roster. I don't necessarily see that for Zay Jones. Next up is Darius Williams, and they certainly do not have a replacement for Darius Williams on the roster. You do have Tyson Campbell, who you love. You're going to want to extend him after the 2023 season potentially, but the Jaguars would save $10 million against the cap in 2024 by moving on from Darius Williams. So when you look at that, obviously that's a very big number, would clear a lot of cap space for you, give you a lot of maneuverability and flexibility, but Darius Williams is clearly your second best corner, and it's not close. If you lost Darius Williams in 2024, what are you looking at after Tyson Campbell? I really don't know. Obviously, you've added some late round picks over the last couple years. Maybe a couple of them could develop into quality players, but at this point, it looks like if you moved on from Darius Williams, you would need to address that position in a big, big way. Next player up, the final player I have here is Brandon Scherff. He would save the team $9 million if they moved on from him following the 2023 season against the cap. Now, I would be pretty shocked about this because I think that they love Brandon Scherff, what he brings to the offensive line from a physical standpoint and athletic standpoint. I also think they look at him as the leader of the offensive line, but money talks sometimes, so you never know with these types of situations. But Scherff would really surprise me. Darius Williams would surprise me as well right now, based on how the roster currently looks, but they could obviously pivot there. And then you look at Zay Jones, another one where the roster is currently, it would kind of surprise me, and you would need to clearly address the position if you did move on from Zay Jones. So we'll see how it all plays out. The 2024 cap is not officially set yet, so things could change, but this is where we're at. Projected as of now, again, was $25 million. With those 6 guys off the roster, though, the Jaguars would be sitting at just under $80 million in 2024 cap space. So you see how they could pivot to pay younger players and or bring in other free agents that they seem to value more. But this is just a little look ahead at what could happen following the 2023 season for your Jacksonville Jaguars, regardless of how far they go. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can hit me up on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo. Let me know what you think. You can also hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Drop a comment in the comment section. If you're looking for some new gear, check out genjag.com. Plenty of fun stuff at genjag.com/shop. Thanks so much for tuning in, Duval.